Hi everyone. So in this video, we're going to look at Unity. Unity is a program that you can download to make games. You can either make 2D games or 3D games in it and other types of games. And their website is unity3d.com, and you can go to there in your favorite browser. And then you can click on the Get Unity button. And there are three different versions: Plus, Pro, and Personal at this time. They may change that later on. And right now, for beginners, the Personal version is great. The Pro and Plus versions have additional features which might make it easier for you to work with teams and things like that. So go to Try Personal, agree to the terms, and then you'll want to download the Unity Hub. You can download individual versions of Unity, but what's nice about the Unity Hub is that it's kind of a jumping off point for multiple versions of Unity on your machine. And so if you're working on a specific game that needs a specific version of Unity, Unity Hub allows you to manage those versions on your machine. So I've done that already. And when I actually open up Unity Hub, this is what I might see. I see three tabs here: Projects, Learn, and Installs. When I go to Installs, you'll notice that I have many versions of Unity installed, and that's mainly to work on different projects that I have, and each one of those projects may use a different version of Unity. You can set which version you want as your preferred version over in the little three dots here. You can actually set it to be preferred, or you can go to official releases and then download them to your machine. So official releases will allow you to download specific versions. I have the latest version as of today, which is 2018.2.11 F1. That's currently on my machine. Let's open it up and check it out. You'll need to actually download a version to your machine, and I would say download the latest one or check with your instructor about which one you should download for the class. So I'm going to open this, and because it's preferred, I just go up here and select New, and I'm going to build a new Unity project, calling it New Unity Project. I'm actually going to put it on my desktop so it's a little easier to see. And I can pick the version that I want up here, so I'm going to pick the latest version here. And then I could choose either a 2D template, a 3D template, some with extras and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a 3D template. And this is similar to creating a Pro Tools session. It's going to create a new folder on my desktop, and that folder is going to contain all the information that Unity needs to create a game. So when I add sound objects or add art assets to the project, they'll be added into this project folder. So Unity is still opening. All right, and so this is the default, how Unity works by default. I'm going to kind of enlarge it to the full screen. If you're not seeing what I'm seeing here, what you want to do is go to the window menu and choose Layouts, Default, and that will bring up the default layout for the scene. What are we looking at here? We're looking at a 3D world, which is in the Scene window here, and there are two objects in the scene: a camera and also a light source. And they're in what's called our sample scene. And you can see in the hierarchy over here on the left, that's what's in our scene. So I can create more objects in our scene by either importing an object or going up to the Game Object menu and choosing a 3D object. Let's create a plane for our world. A plane is kind of a surface. So I have a surface. And now I see that plane in our world, and I can use these arrows to move around this plane, to move it wherever I want to. And it's a good time for us to talk about the toolbar up here. This toolbar allows us to do different things with the objects themselves. So we have a move tool, which is what I'm currently selected on. I have a rotate tool, so if I select that, it will allow me to rotate this shape if I want to. So I can kind of go in here and rotate the plane in a different direction. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Usually the one that I like to be on is this tool, which is the Move tool. These other tools we'll talk about later. Scaling is for scaling up objects. Uh, Rectangle tool allows you to kind of connect objects together. I think this is kind of a generic object that allows you to do all of them. I haven't used it before, so hopefully maybe you could tell me what that's for. When you select objects in the world, it brings up an inspector on the right-hand side of different properties for that object. For instance, if I go to the plane, I can rename that plane to like floor. Maybe that's the floor. And I can actually change the position and rotation and scale. I'm going to make it a little bigger. I'm going to make it so the X is from left to right, the Y is top to bottom, and Z is front to back. So for this, we want to change the X, we'll change that to 5, and so that's kind of our left to right, and actually our Z direction is like that. Now, how do you move around in the world? That's kind of an interesting thing. So if you are placed in the middle here, you can actually, so I'm selected on the plane, I can move that up and down. When I do that, you can see the positions kind of moving here. But there's this up in the upper right corner that tells us kind of where the axes are. So X is kind of going diagonally this way, Z is going diagonally this way, and Y is up and down. Now, for me to move around in a world, it's going to help us to have an object in the world to see kind of how we're moving. So I'm going to create another game object and go to 3D objects and create a cube in our world. So sometimes the cube might be below the plane. You can see it's down below the plane, and I'm going to raise it up above the plane so I can see it. I'm also going to make it bigger. One of the things that I might want to do is I might want to change the scale of this too. So maybe I'm making it 1 by 4 by 9. Or maybe I want 1 by 9 by 4. Yeah, so if you're a Kubrick fan, you might recognize that. That's the monolith. The dimensions of the monolith are 1 squared by 2 squared by 3 squared. So you get this monolith here. Now, if I want to move in, zoom in, what I can do is on a laptop, I can use 2 fingers and kind of push forward or pull back. And then I can also kind of right click and move around the world a little bit. So I'm just moving the trackpad and or mouse, and you can move around the world that way. When I have 2 fingers click like this, I can also zoom in and out by using the W, A, S, and D keys. So I can use that like I'm playing a game. W moves me forward, D will move me to the right, A will move me to the left, and S will move me back. And E will actually move me up in the world, and Q will move me down. Now, again, you have to have both of your fingers, or you have to be right-clicking to kind of do that. So I can kind of move and sort of explore my world. It takes a little while to get used to that. It definitely took me a while to get used to the controls in that world. What we're looking at is a scene, and I can save that scene. Right now it's called sample scene. And where does this sample scene exist? It exists in your assets folder in a folder called scenes. So if we look at that, we can see that we're in the asset. This project menu shows us that we're in the assets folder, and within inside of that, we're in a scenes folder, and then we see the sample scene. Now, if we go back to the Finder and look at the Finder here, we can see our new Unity project has a folder called Assets. Within Assets, we have Scenes, and Scenes has a folder called Sample Scene. Meta files, which we're seeing here, are kind of data files that are keeping track of different properties for the scene, for instance. So you could think of those as like a peak generator, like if you're in Ableton Live or if you're in Digital Performer, it's creating sort of the shape of the waveform, and it keeps all those documents on your disk. That's what kind of a meta file is. It keeps some extra information about the actual file itself. Those can be recreated if they get deleted by accident. but you want to hold on to like the scene or other objects that you pull into the world. All right, so now I go back to Unity here, and I can move around. And just a few things about sound. What I can do is I can actually add a sound to this object. We're not playing the game, we use the transport controls up here to play the game. So let's add a component to our cube or our monolith. I'm going to rename this monolith. And when I rename it, you can see that also renames it in the hierarchy. What I can do is add a component. A component is like an additional functionality for that object in the world. And I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to type in audio source, and you'll see on the object here, you'll see a little speaker icon. That speaker icon is that audio source. It means I've attached kind of a speaker to that monolith. And if I had Ligeti's vocals, I'd probably attach it there. But I can attach any sound that's in my project. So what I can do is that audio source or speaker has a bunch of properties. One of them is play and awake. That means when the game starts, it's going to play. It also has other things like looping and other characteristics. And what we can do is on our hard drive, we can find a WAV file. So I'm going to look for a WAV file, waveform audio, and what I'm going to do is just bring in a very simple waveform audio track, and I'm going to kind of look through here. I have this little rise up feedback thing, and what I can do is I can actually do this two ways. I can drag this over to my assets folder here, and it will copy it into the assets folder. So here's my sound, and then when I go back to, if I go back to the Finder and look at my project again inside my assets folder, it copied that sound in. Unity likes WAV files, so I would definitely use WAV files if you can, because Unity has its own sound compression built in, so it's going to turn that WAV file into an Ogg Vorbis file by default in the game. And what I can do now is go to my monolith, select my monolith, and then my audio clip I can set to, by using that little icon off to the right, this little round icon, you can set it by clicking on it, and that will show you all the sounds in your project. And then you can select it, and then when I press play, it will play the sound. Now, one of the things that you might be asking, you might have a different visual perspective when you hit play. The reason why I had this visual perspective is the camera in the scene, meaning my sort of viewer position is set to right here. So if I want to change my camera position, and it's giving you a preview down here, if I want to be closer to the monolith, I'll move in closer like that. So if you, for instance, maybe you're underneath the floor that we created, you can move your camera above the floor like that. One of the other things that you should know that's a little weird about Unity is when you go underneath the floor disappears. You can kind of see that over in the camera preview. That's because most 3D engines only render from one side to save memory and CPU power. So when my camera goes below the floor, we see through it because it's not rendering. It only renders from the top. So if we actually wanted to have a floor render from both the top and the bottom, then I'd create an identical floor and reverse its sort of rotate it so it's upside down. So I'd see it from both sides. Even if I'm in the monolith here, like if I move the camera within the monolith, so I'm going to take the main camera and move it into the monolith, when I'm inside of it, it'll disappear like that. But I'll still see its shadow on the ground. That's because, again, it's only rendering from the outside and not the inside. So if you're inside of it, then it won't render. Again, if you wanted it to render from the inside, that you'd have to put another box on the inside and flip the direction. So this is just something that happens in 3D development environments, and you'll get used to it over time. And it's just a kind of a feature that's part of it to save CPU time, because usually you're not inside of objects. You'd bounce off this object, right? You'd bounce off the monolith. You wouldn't actually be inside of it. So why render the inside? So that's kind of their thinking. Anyways, that's a little brief tutorial. You can save your scene now. You can see up here there's a little asterisk. That means I haven't saved it. So I hit Command S on a Mac, Control S on a PC, and it'll save the sample scene. That's a little introduction to Unity. Hope you enjoyed it.